So today we have some updates in regards to the PC sales performance of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Spoiler alert, it's looking pretty good. We also got some updates in regards to Onimusha Way of the Sword, including a surprise announcement of a returning older Onimusha game that is going to be getting a remaster. It looks pretty sick, so if any of that sounds cool to you, feel free to click the like button, and if you're new here and you'd like to stick around and help support the channel, you can subscribe, and as always, leave your thoughts in the comments down below. But be nice, because I'm sensitive. Now, starting off first with that sales information for Rebirth on PC, this is coming to us from Matt Piscatella over on Blue Sky. And if you don't know who Matt is, he is one of the heads of Circana. Now, if you don't know what Circana is, they're a company that tracks things based on dollar sales. So video games, accessories, book bags, you name it, they're probably covering how well these things are doing. And again, they do this based on dollar sales, which means how much money a product made, instead of doing actual sales figures, because oftentimes those are really hard to come by unless a studio or a company actually announces, hey, our game sold X amount of copies. So by going down the dollar sales route, you actually do end up with a number or figure that is a more accurate representation of how well something performed compared to going to a website like VG Charts, which just kind of poops out numbers from time to time. So I like Circana, they do good work, and a lot of their stuff, again, is pretty accurate, or at least as accurate as you can get without the actual figures in front of you. So Matt goes on to say, Rebirth had a fantastic Steam launch. Across physical and tracked digital, Rebirth was the best-selling game of the week, ending January 25th in the US market, again, according to dollar sales, while the Remake and Rebirth Twin Pack ranked third. Now, you might have noticed that he wrote physical and tracked digital. What that means is basically the combination of all game sales, whether they be physical copies or digital copies, which means that Rebirth, out of all the games and accessories that you could have bought within the past week or so, ranked number 1 on those charts, which means it probably sold incredibly well, which is a very good sign because that shows that people are, receptive to Rebirth, especially on PC, and with good word of mouth, I would assume that the sales for the game would continue to be pretty strong, and again, just shows that Rebirth, whether it be on PS5 or PC, does have legs. And again, that word of mouth is incredibly important. You're seeing so many people play this game for the first time, and they're enjoying it, and they're having a blast. Now, when it does come to the PC performance on a technical side, everything started off really well. Even when I first covered the game's release, it seemed like it was performing really well, and it was one of the better PC ports from Square Enix. However, as the game was made available to more people and more people started playing, that's when you start to have a lot of the other issues kind of rear their head. And due to the nature of how video games are made these days, they're usually made for PlayStation 5 first and then ported to other consoles and PC at a later date, which can cause some problems and at times restrict maybe a lot of the features that people would come to expect from a PC port. So some people are playing the game and they're having a blast and having zero issues. Other people are playing the game and it is crashing on them constantly. It's unfortunate, but that's just kind of the nature of PC gaming these days, especially since everyone has a different setup. And for the developers to try and account for that is probably really difficult. Now, we do have a follow-up from user Alex Donaldson on Blue Sky, who is an industry journalist, who says, this smashed all their expectations and projections for this fiscal year. So from launch through end of March. And if I remember correctly, Square Enix's fiscal year started, I believe, at the end of March, early April of 2024, and comes to an end March of this year. So within that time frame, Rebirth apparently did meet those expectations and smashed some of them in some occasions, specifically with the PC port. Now, when it comes to the PC port of Rebirth, Square most definitely has different expectations for how well this version of the game will do compared to the console version, and we don't have exact numbers. We don't know what their internal estimates were or internal projections were, but the game performing as well as it did says to me that it probably smashed whatever expectation they had set. So to give an example, I'm just going to pull 2 random numbers. This has nothing to do with Square or Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I'm just using these as examples. So let's say that maybe Square expected Rebirth to sell, 200,000 units in 2 months, and instead it sold 200,000 units in 1 week. That's pretty impressive. Again, that's just an example. We don't know what Rebirth actually did number-wise, but clearly this is a very good thing. And that just speaks to the overall success of Rebirth. Again, last year when it launched on console, there was a lot of doom and gloom. Square Enix didn't want to come out and say how well or how bad the game did, so we weren't really left with any accurate projections, but based on how well Rebirth did, which by the end of 2024, Circana released the results of the top-selling games of 2024, Rebirth was the 10th best-selling game of all of 2024, and it was the only console exclusive in the top 10 to do so. So Rebirth being locked to the PlayStation 5 and it still ends up being the 10th best-selling game is incredibly impressive, and now the PC port comes out and clearly is doing very well. That's got to be good news for Square, although I wouldn't be shocked if they came out and be like it didn't meet sales expectations, because they do have some really high expectations. But based on this, it seems like whatever expectations they had for the PC port, the game just kind of blew past that. And the game doing really well on PC is a boon for the PlayStation 5 version. It's kind of like a similar situation that Ghost of Tsushima saw, where the PS4 and PS5 versions came out and it sold incredibly well, and then a couple years later it came out on PC, and not only did it sell well on PC, it in turn raised the sales of the console version, which I think could happen for Rebirth. And with Rebirth getting a lot of press through Game Awards and those types of nominations, you're seeing way better marketing, especially too for the PC version of Rebirth. At least I am. I go on TikTok every day and I always see ads for Rebirth, whether they be from Square Enix directly or from content creators who are, paid and sponsored to promote the game. I'm seeing way more promotion for the PC port than I did the PS5 version of the game. So this is super cool, very exciting, and again, this is going to reinforce to Square Enix, yes, we really do need to get our games on as many platforms as possible, day and date. And if it's not possible to do it day and date, then you gotta do it on PC or other consoles ASAP, because that's really what's going to help the longevity of these games. Now again, it is a double-edged sword. When you have a game coming out on multiple consoles, that will slow down development time and potentially raise development costs, because you're now making different ports of the game and it's going to take you a lot longer. That sucks, but in the long run, it should help the longevity and health of the game as well as the company, because profits are most important first and foremost to these companies. But it also helps you reach a bigger audience. And a lot of people have been talking about Final Fantasy, and I know there's people on this channel that have left comments saying like the way that Final Fantasy finds success again and becomes super popular is if they go back to being turn-based with blue text boxes and white text. That's the answer. That's going to fix everything. It's not that simple, and that wouldn't work anyway. Well, it would be nice to see a turn-based Final Fantasy. I don't think they're going to do that anytime soon, at least with the mainline games. It would be great if they did, even though I very much like what they're doing nowadays. I think the answer here is that multi-platform approach. Being exclusive to one console means that you have a smaller audience. And if you look at the audience that played FF7 OG, 8, and 9, they were all on the PlayStation and they loved it. But as people grow up, they gravitate towards other consoles. Some people stayed with Sony, some people went over to Xbox, some people went over to Nintendo, and some people left the console ecosystem completely and went PC. So if you can get these games out on every platform possible, that means more people can reach them, and that's just better overall for the health of the game. So moving over to that Onimusha Way of the Sword presentation that happened at Capcom Spotlight, I'll be honest, this could have been an email. There wasn't too much new here that they described for Onimusha Way of the Sword, although there are some positive things that we can talk about in regards to the game's combat. But I will link you guys to the previous Onimusha video we did, where I kind of broke down the story, the environments, and even the gameplay in much greater detail just based on what we saw in the trailer. So I'll leave a link to that video instead of just repeating myself in this one in case you guys want to check that one out. But in this PowerPoint presentation, because that's basically what it is, they really stressed compelling characters in a new lead. We still don't know who our lead character is, but it's not Samanosuke, it's not Jubei, it's somebody brand new. He looks pretty cool, and based on his story that they've kind of told us so far, he's going to experience a twist of fate, not the Matt Hardy move, that will grant him the use of the Oni Gauntlet and aid him on his adventure. Of course, we're going to be in the setting of Kyoto, Japan, and this is really cool. They describe it as the ultimate sword fighting action, which is a little different from previous Onimushas. Again, the older Onimushas were kind of like Resident Evil with swords and samurai, demons in ancient Japan. So Samanosuke and Jubei were kind of tank-like in their controls, but they were still faster than like Chris and Jill were or Leon and Claire were in the older Resident Evil games. And again, it focuses way more on the action melee combat and special abilities. But them putting the emphasis on the ultimate sword fighting action is great, and that reassures to me that we're going to get some really great, potentially character action style combat. Because in the previous video, I will repeat this part here, I brought up, what kind of route is Capcom going to go with this game's combat? Do they do a more character action driven game like a Devil May Cry or a Ninja Gaiden or a Bayonetta, or do they go down the Souls route of action combat games? And I had some people say, why are you bringing up Souls? Like, what does that have to do with Onimusha? I bring up Souls games because a lot of action games these days tend to go down that Souls route of having the camera behind the character, having a targeting lock-on system, and just having that overall feel of a Souls-like action game, like a Dark Souls, like a Lies of P, like a Sekiro, like a Wukong. And for a lot of the younger generation, that's what they grew up with. So when they hear action game, they think of those games, not the games I mentioned previously like Ninja Gaiden and Devil May Cry. That's the stuff I grew up on, and if you're watching this video, you probably grew up on that as well. But them putting that emphasis on the sword fighting action means we're gonna probably get that character action, fast-paced, super cool combo, responsive gameplay for this new Onimusha. And they really emphasize, again, that slicing action and being able to cut through enemies. And they do say that the game will have a lot of blood and dismemberment. We didn't see a ton of that in the previous trailers, and that was purely just because of censoring issues and certain markets not wanting blood and dismemberment in their trailers, so they had to pull back on some of that. But they reassured us that, yeah, this game is going to let you cut limbs off and shit. It's going to be super cool. Of course, we will have our Souls abilities, allowing us to do special cool moves like elemental stuff, I would assume, which is going to come into play. Another mechanic we mentioned in the previous video that I thought was super interesting is every single time the lead character blocked an attack, the middle of his sword glowed a bright red, and eventually the entire blade grew red and turned into a blue flame. So that's going to be some kind of cool blocking or parrying type of mechanic, I think, that they're going to have integral to the gameplay. And another thing they wanted to focus on was that this is not going to be a game that is focused on difficulty. It's not going to be like a super punishing, difficult game. What they want to focus on with this new Onimusha is thrilling gameplay, having awesome swordplay combat, which to me is music to my ears. I think of games like Devil May Cry or Ninja Gaiden, or even something more recent like Ghost of Tsushima, which has some really simple sword-based combat, but it's incredibly addictive and fun, and I never got tired of it. It's super thrilling and very cinematic. So again, this is Capcom. They really love focusing on their gameplay and coming up with different approaches for these games. So we know the game's probably going to play very well, and I'm really excited for them to hopefully give us, more information in the coming months in regards to the actual gameplay, and actually talk to us about how the mechanics work and what the gameplay itself is going to be like. What's exploration going to be like? So while this entire presentation, again, could have been an email, that emphasis on the slicing action and the ultimate sword fighting action reassures to me this is going to be one of the faster paced, combo heavier character action games, and not something like a Souls-like, which, I have no issue with Souls-like games. I just tend to prefer the character action stuff. And to end the presentation, they surprised everyone with Onimusha 2, A Samurai's Destiny, getting a remaster that's coming out this year. There's no release date just yet, but it just says 2025. So it's cool that they're doing that. I know that when Onimusha Warlords HD Remaster came out, it didn't sell all that well, but to know that even then they're not going to let that affect a remaster of Onimusha 2 is super cool, and I can't wait to play this one. I had so many great memories of the OG Onimusha 2. One in particular I'll mention very quickly, but I know there's the village hub area with all of the warriors that you can befriend, and then going up a little further was an entrance to a mine where you could go in, and I remember going through the mine, fighting through a bunch of Genma. Again, in the previous video I called them Oni because my brain thought, oh, Oni, demon, but no, Oni are the good guys, Genma are the bad guys. I messed that up, apologies, but I remember fighting through so many Genma, reaching a boss, beating the boss, not having any healing items, and having, no joke, maybe like 25% of my health. So I then had to fight my way out of the cave. I reached the last hallway and there's like 6 Genma waiting for me, and I'm like, crap, I'm screwed, I'm gonna die. And then one of the warriors from the village showed up. I can't remember which one, but he shows up and there's like a brief cutscene and he's like, Jubei, I'm here to help you. And then together, through the power of bonds and friendship, we cut down all 6 Genma and I made it out alive. Those are the moments in gaming that I remember the most and that are usually the most impactful and I remember as an adult. So it's super cool. I can't wait to revisit that game. Hopefully we get a release date soon. But with that being said, that is the video. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you guys think of this information in regards to Rebirth's sales figures on the PC side of things? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's bad? Have you bought the game on PC yet? And also, what do you think so far of Onimusha Way of the Sword? And are you excited with the route that they seem to be going down with the game's combat? Let me know in the comments down below. I am Curious Corduroy. I will see you guys in the next video. Please remember to always be excellent to one another.